Good afternoon, John. John
Yeah.
Donovan.
Hey, Marty.
And
Marty Keller.
welcome. Yes, thank you. And welcome to those of you who are enjoying or like to enjoy this intentional living podcast. That's what we call this. And we call it the Intentional Living Podcast because of the process that John developed over the course of the last quarter century. Um, because of one major thing that he discovered for himself, and those of us who have taken on the work have learned it for ourselves as well, which is dealing with the fact that we have compulsive behaviors. Things happen to us, and we feel compelled to do things when our minds go, "Don't do that,"
Right.
and we do it anyway. Or it can be the reverse of that. Our minds say, do that, and our bodies won't let us do it. We hold back. We
Hmm.
resist. And it's
Yeah.
like, what the heck is happening? Why is that going on? And John developed this process to help us get in touch with the subconscious realm where those compulsions are born and they become habits and they continue to live because there's some sense in that subconscious, as John talked about in our previous podcast, and we talked about the subconscious. There's some kind of sense that this is for my good. That
Yeah.
there's a psychic configuration in our subconscious, which by definition, because it's subconscious, we can't see it in our conscious minds. That's why we often have this sense of disconnect. There's something inside of me that was programmed from an early age to take care of me. And I'm now in my I'm 73 years old now, and I don't
Hmm.
necessarily live in those situations where that psychic structure was created, that defense mechanism that's lived in my subconscious. So the podcast here, we've been doing this for over 4.5 years now, is just one endless exploration of this way that we're constructed, we human beings are constructed with a huge subconscious element to our minds where all kinds of actually wonderful things happen. And our conscious mind is capable of retrieving what's going on in our subconscious, but it can only do it a little bit at a time.
Right.
So that's what we do here in the Intentional Living podcast. And last week, John took us on a tour of the subconscious mind and left me with some questions. And I warned him that I wanted to ask some questions. And the first I'd like to start out with is, would you be willing to share just a little bit about the dimensions of the subconscious mind? What are we talking about here? What's the
Right.
relationship between the subconscious and conscious minds?
Yeah. If anybody tunes into my Saturday morning, I go over this every time that we as human beings have this capacity to remember everything that happened to us, especially those things that were, I want to call negative or hurtful or uh, uh, we found ourselves in some kind of pain. We remember the experience and it's relegated. It's like our total experience, 90 to 95% of it is relegated to the subconscious. For us to complete a task in the moment, is a food, shelter, clothing, connection, we don't have the capacity to go over everything that ever happened to us and then choose to do something. It would be, well, it's about our survival, food, shelter, clothing. If that were the case, we life has been consistent on this planet, however many years you believe we started from amoeba to now. And the human being has created a mechanism to ensure our survival. And that mechanism is called the reticular activating system. That system in us, that reticular activating, activates us to something that may be discordant or dangerous.
And that's actually a physical structure in the brain, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I qualify that when I'm telling people in the group, it's not because you're in recovery or it's not because you have this problem. Every human being on the planet is built this way. There's biochemical, electromagnetic being with this mechanism of reticular activating system, which is the brain stem and midbrain. It's our what we call instinctual mind or reptilian brain that has these instinctual things in it. Now, this part of our brain also is the part that beats our heart, does all the different chemical exchanges throughout the trillions of cells in our body by itself without us having to go, oh, I'm going to make this hamburger me. It's no, I eat the hamburger. Oh, that was nice. And it becomes me. It fuels the energy for my life.
Now
That's the
imagine
realm of,
imagine if we had to consciously make each breath happen.
yes, yeah. Or make food into uh, the
Or
substance and energy that motivates us. Yeah, it would be.
right.
So the brainstem is powerful. The midbrain is what we developed as what we call mammalian brain, where we left the water. We went from cold-blooded to warm-blooded, which means different things could harm us. So this emotional midbrain, they call it the monkey mind, was developed again for our safety so that we could notice, feel cold, oh, move to warm. That's a real remedial aspect of this, but that's essentially what it is to notice discomfort, move to comfort. And that's all happening in the subconscious part of our mind. And when we get traumatized as children, the actual capacity to feel what's happening to us has been estranged from us because feeling, crying, it got me more pain or more ridicule or more harm. So I learned to stuff my feelings. And in the process, got estranged from that part of our brain, that part of our sentient human being, allowed us to move safely through our environment, whether it's relational, whether it's hiking, whether it's danger from outside sources, whether we simply have this built into us. So this subconscious isn't the enemy. It becomes confusing when the subconscious, my subconscious, John Donovan, got somebody criticizing me meant that I got ostracized, or I got sent to my room, or I got. So now somebody criticizing me, this activates, which is actually for my well being, although now my behavior is not rational. It's like the burnt toast thing. I want to, me screaming and yelling around burnt toast. How do you explain that? It's like, that's not rational. And yet I'm doing it. So what I learned and what I want to offer, suggest, is that everybody else learned it the same way, is to assume that it's outside of me harming me. So I had to control the outside. This is the reason for my alcoholism, workaholism, rageaholic. I had to control the outside so I felt safe inside instead of going inside. What am I feeling? What's the situation? Evaluating the situation. And inside, every time we make a decision, the event happens. We evaluate, associate this event to all past events, and that's the subconscious, and then respond or react. In my subconscious, unhealed trauma, I would react in a way that was in alignment with the trauma, yet not rational in my real time. Um, so the 95% of our experience that we relegated to our memory is active in motivating the behavior in the moment. And it's a large part of what I choose in the moment. Before my recovery, again, we're using an example of burnt toast, extreme reaction, fight, flight, freeze, please. now, after doing this work over and over and over, simply owning the reaction, I was I was screaming and yelling, I was violent. Nice deep breath, knowing that it came from something unresolved. In the acknowledgement of the behavior, blame free, judgment free. This is a real important part. Not, I don't say I'm mean or I'm violent to beat myself up or prove that I'm no good. It's simply acknowledging the reaction based on the event. Nice deep breath, blame free, judgment free. And then feeling that this fluffing thing, the subconscious doesn't tell time. So what happened to me at 3 months in the subconscious mind could happen to me right now. It doesn't tell time. So if somebody's tone inflicted trauma. So I'm 45 years old. Somebody's tone elicited a response from the trauma. So I simply own the reaction. Tell me if I'm in alignment with the question you're asking, because I
Well,
get.
I was going to say let's explore that because what I think you're saying, and I think this is really critical to for our appreciation of what's going on here, is that the subconscious mind does not know time.
No.
So if I have an experience at 3 months old that yields fear, um, terror, grief, whatever, that's too difficult for my little body to handle.
Yes.
That that somehow something has to happen to manage that if the external forces, in this case the mom or not as frequently the dad, don't know how to help me work that through. So
Yes.
essentially what you're saying is that this we're dealing with unhealed trauma. Something happens, something violent happens, and instead of just naturally flowing through my little body and being released, like being like crying and then being held,
Yes.
maybe I'm crying and I'm in my crib all alone, so that there's no healing to that. It just lingers. And
Yeah.
so what I'm hearing you say is that um, to the extent that we all in this memory bank in our subconscious, we have these effects that never got dealt with.
Right.
Those things act, those experiences still assume present tense reality. It's as if it's still
Yes.
happening when something external
Yes.
comes in, someone yells. Um, for me, it's like anytime anyone raises his or her voice, I immediately feel I can feel a contraction in my chest, and
Yep.
my heartbeat goes up, and I want to run away.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
If 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 the trauma gets healed, so let's talk about why we do the accountability practice. Can we heal now later on in life in real time in our 70s here or however old we are when we take on the practice? Can we actually heal those traumas so they don't continue to need to manifest these behaviors?
Yes. And the healing,
And
the
how do we
healing
do
didn't,
that?
the healing didn't come from parentage or guidance. So in the present moment, when let's use another example of abandonment.
Okay.
Somebody walks out the door. We're in a situation where voices are raised, and somebody walks out the door. I would flip out. It's like, where are you going? You can't leave. Abandonment. So, okay, a child left in the crib, nobody comes to the door. Abandonment. That stuffed, what is Dr. Spock, let the kid cry it out. And it's like the worst thing you could do is let the kid cry it out because he learns to stop. He learns to stop. And so we bring that what we learned as children into our adult lives. The only thing that will uh, uh, assuage the reaction of you walking out the door is you coming back. So I do everything I can. This is where a lot of domestic violence and violence happens is somebody leaving the relationship. In fact, people who run safe houses talk about that time where somebody leaves, the other person escalates. It's very dangerous. And abandonment is, there's a book called The Developing Mind by, um, I forget his name right now, Daniel Siegel. And it talks about different styles of abandonment that we exemplify in our adult life based on what happened to us as children. Okay. So in to heal that, I know this is happening. I know that this significant person walking out the door doesn't mean that I will be alone for the rest of my life. So I take a deep breath, nice deep breath. I'm terrified. I'm a 50-year-old adult male, and this woman walks out of the room, and I simply acknowledge I'm terrified, deadly danger. For the child, it was deadly danger. Okay, so I take a breath. I'm not going to die. I intend to be kind. I intend to nurture myself. I intend to heal. That goes into whatever happened. And there's a myriad of things that happen. There's a constellation of events that cause the trauma. So I do an accountability tree. I'm terrified. Nice deep breath. Yeah, I intend to nurture myself. I intend to know that I'm not going to die. I intend to. That's, remember, no time. So that child's right there with me right now. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You're going to, that's the nurturing I didn't get that I'm getting in the present moment. And the subconscious not being able to tell time is the bad news, and it's also the good news. Because if I catch myself in a reaction and just name it, that was violent, or I'm screaming and yelling, or I don't want you to leave, I'm terrified. This doesn't even make sense for an adult. She walks out the door, but it makes sense to that little child. So right now in that moment, I just simply say, I'm terrified. That trauma was validated. I'm terrified. I intend to nurture myself. I intend to breathe through this. I intend to know that I'm okay and safe. Yes, that is healing. That whatever happened in the subconscious, and we don't know what age, from conception to, well, I'm 75, so conception to 70, it's like, but I'm addressing it, which is what didn't happen as a child. I watched my daughter with my grandson all the way through. He's 9 years old, and if that child cried, she was there. And she, no, I'm not. I'm not saying no. He's crying. He needs me. Boom. That was just her instinctual and her recovery too. And she didn't let him cry. And she got told that, oh, he's going to be spoiled. You got no. You couldn't tell her. No, that child's crying. It needs attention. It doesn't cry just because it wants to cry. So that was that. I want to say prevented a lot of stuff, trauma for my grandson. And I'm really grateful for that. I just want to say that I'm really grateful for that. So I can give that to myself. Remember, the subconscious doesn't tell time. Somebody walks out the door. I'm terrified. I'm terrified. Nice deep breath. I can nurture myself. I can be kind to myself. I can love myself just the way I am terrified without having to explain it. Just know. Knowing that any reaction response coming from me that is not in alignment with what's happening is unresolved trauma. Huge awareness. Because now, instead of conniving to get her back, phoning her on her phone 3,000 times, nice deep breath, she'll be back, I know. And then I could be, well, you know what, John? I would have left the room too if somebody was screaming and yelling at me. Nice deep breath. It's okay. And I become lucid. And it's like, how do you heal? In the accountability process is catching yourself in the reaction response, owning it from you, your choice. We don't know what the motivation was because there's so many things that happen in our subconscious. It just a lot, but it affects the subconscious. One of the things I said last week was I'm manifesting from my subconscious right now after 36 years. So paying attention to my reaction or my response tells me where to look. Um, in this, I just had a knee replacement surgery, and I can count on my hand times where I went to, oh, darn it. And I went, oh, there it is. Nice deep breath. Yes, it hurts. Yes, this hurts. Yes, it's uncomfortable. It's tedious, and I can't go golfing right now. It's okay. And it's like I can self-soothe in the moment, and it's automatic for me. Um, and then I just go, yeah, okay, what do I need now? I need ice. Do I need to lay down? Do I need to elevate my foot? I become proactive instead of reactive and mad at the doctor for not telling me what's going on and all this stuff that I used to do.
One of the things that you said earlier, I want to follow up on. You talked about when we pay attention to that inner experience, and we do it in the accountability or in the intentional living process through what we call the accountability tree.
Yeah,
And it's just a way to account for what's going on and get to the truth of the matter so that I can now be free to create something else. Remember at the top of the podcast, we said we're talking about looking into those compulsions that
mm-hmm.
that don't make any sense to our rational mind. Well, here we are. This is where
Here
we
we are.
are. I want to tell you and the listener that the most radical shift that I learned from you, which has changed everything, is a 5-word phrase. I give myself permission to.
Yeah,
I give myself permission to, whatever it is. I give myself permission to be afraid. I give myself permission to be an asshole. I give myself permission to be stubborn. I give myself permission to resist. I give myself permission to not want to do my exercises.
yeah,
Whatever it is, there's there's a there's an unconditionality, which is what we did not get as children. We
right.
did not get the unconditionality that becomes validation, and validation becomes the basis for self-worth.
Yes,
If I feel okay and wanted and important and safe as a little kid, I'm going to grow up to feel safe in the world, to feel important in the world, to feel an actor rather than a
yeah,
reactor. So
yes.
um, that phrase, I use it all the time. I give myself permission to. Then I go to what do I want? I give
Mm-hmm.
myself permission to whatever it is. And believe me, John, I have a panoply of things that I need to give or I choose to give myself permission to.
Yeah, yeah,
And they're all those leftover behaviors from childhood. There's all part of that defense mechanism, fight, flight, freeze, please, whatever it is. And they're all versions of fear.
right.
And when I give myself permission to be afraid, it sounds like magic. It feels like magic because so often there's a release.
Okay,
There's a release of tension, stress, anxiety, whatever that results in compulsion.
right,
Those things just sort of disappear.
right.
And my theory is, and I'd love you're the guy who invented this, so I'd love your response. But my theory is as they say in adult children of alcoholics, I'm reparenting myself. I'm giving
Yes.
myself the parenting I didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
Or as I like to say, I'm experiencing unconditional love.
Right,
When I give myself permission to be an asshole, I'm unconditionally accepting me because in that moment, for some reason, I'm feeling like an asshole.
right. Exactly. When I'm in a asshole reaction, and I go, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. we have this principle that we throw around all the time, but we never use it, which is what you resist persists. We talked about the power of the brainstem and midbrain for keeping life consistent through a long period of time. It's powerful. If it says this reaction, I scream and yell, and I'm an asshole. If I give myself permission, this mechanism goes, oh, okay. It's like, it's validating, even though it sounds counterintuitive. It's stopping the craving or the desire for this is if I don't do this, I'm going to die, which is not even in our conscious mind. But I give myself permission to be violent. I stopped pumping adrenaline because it wants to keep you alive and balance with the way you did it. And you're trying to say, I don't want to be alive to this thing that has kept things alive for the millions. You're going to lose that battle. Yep. So I developed this thing, like in my addiction, I hold value as a human being. I'm an alcoholic, and I give myself permission to drink alcohol. Well, just not today. But I found myself in my resistance to not drink consistently in that pattern of behavior. This brainstem midbrain, it's powerful.
Well, that's the bonus, though, we get. When I give myself permission, I actually now put myself a choice as to whether I actually want this.
Yes, exactly.
Because I no longer feel compelled to do it or, conversely, to resist it.
Right.
I give myself permission to be angry. Doesn't mean I have to stay angry. It just means I'm just validating my experience in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when this is the accountability tree. When I own the truth of my experience in the moment, I dissipate resistance. I dissipate duality. I'm just in the unity of my experience. And when I'm in the unity of my experience, I'm in the allness. And then when I'm in the allness, I'm in the place of all possibility. And when I'm in the place of all possibility, I get to say what I want.
Yes. It's a counterintuitive thing that works. I want to say like you, magic. It's just like, yeah.
It certainly seems like magic to a little kid, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. In the addiction field, one of the problems is relapse, or in the jails, it's recidivism. It's like keep coming back, keep using, no matter what the consequences. This motivating factor for alcoholism, because this mechanism has alcohol means I stay alive. Alcohol means I'm safe. Well, that's a life thing. No matter how convoluted it may be, this believes it. So if I tell it no, it goes, oh, watch this. Oh, watch this. And the more I resisted, the more I found myself in the pattern of behavior, and usually escalated.
Yeah.
So,
and what you're implying with your fifth brain thing is that this isn't just a disembodied no. This is a brain structure. This is a neurological system network in our brains that's real. It's physical. It's not just a thought. It's the mechanism by which our whole body is regulated.
Right.
And
it doesn't.
And I was going to say, it doesn't have the choice to not be what it is.
Well, it also is subconscious, subjective. Right. It doesn't equivocate. If I got the message in my childhood that I was not good enough, this will maintain for my survival, not good enough.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So if I go, I give myself permission not to be good enough. Then options, you talk about the possibilities. Options show up.
Yep.
Where before there was this, I'm stupid. I just went back into the not good enough
Right. There
routine.
was no option, and that's what we experienced as is that compulsion that we said at the top of the podcast is what we're all about looking at and finding ways to dissolve.
Right. One of the remarkable things that happened to me in one of these processes was, oh, I I'm going to forgive myself. It's like, where did that come from? That place where this wasn't running the show, I validated it. Yes, I'm an alcoholic, and I give myself permission to drink. And it's like the craving, the seeking shifted. And what I've now come to understand is that it stopped pumping adrenaline
Yeah.
into my body to to get the Sigram 7 or the Mickey Big Mouth, whatever it was, became paramount. Life, life, life. No matter how hard I tried not to, some form of this would show up. And it's loving, like you said, and healing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we're coming to the end of our time together, so we've covered a lot of ground, and I think this is a conversation worth keeping up. There's there's such beauty in the way that we're created and as
oh
human
my God.
beings, and I think we've in the last this podcast and the one last week where we began this conversation about the power and configuration of the subconscious, there's really so much there for us once we demystify it, which is what the accountability practice can do for all of us. So
Yeah.
uh, I like to say to the audience, if there's any topics that you'd like for John and me to explore, please just leave us a note on YouTube in the comment section, and we'll be happy to follow up on things that you would like more information about. And if it's controversial, beautiful, make it controversial.
Yeah.
Uh, we're big boys here, and we can handle that. So,
Hmm.
and for those of you who are new, if you'd like to participate in our meetings, because we do this accountability practice, we learn about the accountability tree and how to apply it in our own lives. There are 4 meetings every week. They're all on Zoom. They're facilitated meetings. John facilitates one, I facilitate another, and 2 of our colleagues facilitate the other 2 meetings. And it's a really great place to learn about this, to ask questions, to do the practice, watch others do the practice, and learn about the healing of this trauma that is the source of our compulsive behaviors. So
Hmm.
information about accessing those meetings will be at the end of the podcast. The times, days, and the Zoom room addresses are all there for you. So please feel free to join us. And with
Okay.
that, John, I thank you as always for this great information. I thank you for being the man who put this practice together, or the man who let spirit let you put it together, whatever way you want to say that. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Thank
And
you, Marty.
we'll see you at the next one, and continue to heal that knee.
Thank you. I will.
I know you will.
Hmm.
Take care.
Uh-huh.
Bye.